Had a prospect call me once and he said, I want to know how I can spend less in retirement without hating my life. He's like, is there a way to reduce my spending without eating ramen for every meal? Well, today I want to show you how you can substantially reduce your retirement spending without reducing your enjoyment or your lifestyle. In this video, I'm going to look at the key areas where retirees spend a bulk of their money, and then give you some simple ways to significantly reduce your cost in these key areas. And I have some good news. It doesn't include eating ramen for every meal, and you can still buy your coffee out. You don't have to make your coffee at home every day. But at the end of the day, the success or failure of any retirement plan, really any budget, is spending less than you earn. So if you can reduce your spending without reducing your lifestyle, it can allow you to retire without worry. And for some of you, it may allow you to retire sooner than you had originally planned. My goal is to help you learn conscious spending. So it's not about reducing your lifestyle, but it's about just being aware of your cost and where your money is going and trying to find ways to reduce the cost, but not reduce your lifestyle. You're going to want to watch the end because I'm going to tell you about a crazy hack that we recently discovered that greatly reduced our travel cost. In fact, we used it last weekend when our family traveled to San Diego. Now, it's not for everyone. It's a new app that's recently been released and you have to get accepted, but I'll tell you more about it at the end. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, on average, people ages 65 and older spend about $52,000 a year. The exact number they gave is $52,141, which is about $14,000 less than the general population. Also, they estimate that the average retiree makes about $53,149 after taxes. That means there's only about $1,000 left over in the average retiree household after taxes and expenses, which means margins are really thin. And this is why inflation over the past couple of years has been so painful. When you live on a fixed income with thin margins, an increase in cost for food and transportation and housing and all the other key areas of life that you need to live, it can have a devastating impact. So one of the questions I get a lot is, how much should I plan on spending in retirement? It typically ends up being around 75 to 80% of what you spent before you're retired. One of the other interesting data points was that the average household spends about $66,928, $67,000 to make it easy, before retirement, and $52,141 or $52,000 after retirement, which is about 80% of your pre-retirement expenses, which is almost identical to the estimate I use when developing a retirement plan. Now, of that $52,000, about 80% or 81% is spent in 5 key areas. And this is the bulk of what I want to focus on as we look at how we reduce our cost. But the money is spent in entertainment, food, healthcare, transportation, and housing. That's where the bulk of your money goes. So we're going to walk through these areas and talk about ways that we can save in each area. So let's dive in. So the first category is entertainment. About $240 a month on average is spent on entertainment, about 6% of your expenses. Now, entertainment is a broad category. It includes all kinds of things. It includes fees and admissions and books and pets and education, experiences, the full gamut. Many entertainment options are free or heavily discounted for seniors. Take advantage of those discounts. Don't hesitate to ask for the senior discount. You paid full price for years. You subsidize other people. It's your turn to get a discount. And there are all kinds of options for entertainment. I love using that term. That's just the term the study used. I like to think of it as recreation, things to keep you active, but things like you can audit classes at your local university. The university I went to used to let retirees audit classes for free, and I think they had to pay for the books. Different universities have different policies, but it's way less expensive than being a student who's receiving credit. And it's a great way to learn. It's a great way to be a part of the community. And I remember as a student loving the contribution of some of the retirees in our class because they were people with some wisdom who had experienced some life. One of the worst things in the world is hearing a bunch of 18-year-olds pontificate about things they know nothing about. But to actually have someone in the class who has some life experience and wisdom speaking into some of the topics, it was really helpful. So not only could it be a way for you to expand your knowledge and grow and provide some recreation, but I think also you're giving back. Another thing you can do is there are free days at museums. There's silver sneakers. My in-laws talk about the silver sneakers, which is, if you don't know about it, an incredible program for retirees to get low cost, if not free, access to recreation centers and gyms. The other thing is your city very possibly will have an adult recreation center or just regular recreation centers and tennis courts and basketball courts and all these pickleball courts now. Every city, it seems like, has a pickleball court now. So there's lots of free things you can do. And then also there are running clubs and hiking clubs and cycling clubs, and many of them are free or have very low expenses. Now, one of my other favorite ways to save money is using the library. Now, I know most of you know about the library, but one of the things I wasn't aware of, that a lot of libraries have a free app called Libby, which my family is obsessed with. You can download Libby and you can check out almost any book. Sometimes you have to wait if it's a really popular book. But you can download almost any book you can think of. You can actually import that book into Kindle or whatever app you use. But also there are a ton of audiobooks on the app, and the app works really well. And so we use Libby all the time to access free books and resources, audiobooks from home. We are a book family. And while I have a hard time curtailing my hard copy book habit, as you can see from behind me, my daughter and my wife love this app. Beyond books, there are so many other things that you can get from the library. You can actually check DVDs out, watch a movie. But they also have access to a streaming app similar to Libby, except it's for streaming movies, kind of like a Netflix, but you can get it free from your local library. I have a list here. Some libraries offer free admission to museums and zoos. They offer musical instruments that you can check out, tools, gadgets. The local libraries in LA offer free parking at state parks. You can go and pick up a pass. They have ukuleles you can pick up. Hiking gear. Our local library has hiking gears, sewing, 3D printing stations, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, the point is the local library can be an incredible resource for free recreational ideas, things that you would have to pay for otherwise that can save you a fortune. The second place people spend their money is on food. Food ends up being about 12% of the average retiree's budget, which is a little over $500 a month. And I'm guessing with some of the recent inflationary pressures, this has grown to be an even larger percent of individuals' budgets. Now, some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to seem very basic, but it adds up. The first recommendation is use a list and shop for only what you need. This can really help reduce food waste. I read somewhere that like 20 to 30% of food gets thrown out. So by using a list and shopping for only what you need, it can really reduce food waste. Now, we use an app called AnyList. I'm not sponsored by AnyList, but it imports recipes from your favorite website. So just go to any website that has recipes, click a button, it imports the recipe, and then uses some kind of magic and creates a list of all the ingredients that you need for that recipe. And then you can just click on it if you want to add it to your shopping list. Then they have an integration that actually integrates to some of the online shopping apps that'll help you then just from that shopping list, you can then drop it right into Instacart or some of the other online grocery shopping apps. So it has saved us a fortune in wasted food. And I feel like for the first time, honestly, in nearly 20 years of marriage, we are finally using most of the things that we buy because we are able to go through this app. We have all of our recipes now stored in there. If there's a new recipe that we find online, we just import it. We can also manually input a recipe. We go through, we create a meal plan. There's a meal plan in there. And then we just look through those recipes and say, okay, we have this item, this item, this item. We don't need to order those. We just tap in what we do need. And then we do most of our shopping using Instacart and just have it delivered to us, which is the second way you can save money is using a food delivery service. Not only allows you to buy from the comfort of your own home, but it also saves you from impulse buying. When I go to the store, I always come back with things that I didn't need. But when I'm just buying online, it helps really reduce those impulse buys because I'm not walking down the aisle being tempted by all these delicious looking things. It really helps to reduce impulse buying. The next strategy, or the third thing that can help reduce your food expenses is buy mainly store brands. It can end up saving you 20 to 25%, or you could use coupons. A lot of times name brands will have coupons. They'll end up being about the same price, if not a bit cheaper. Not all store brands are the same. Some are better than others. I typically find the Whole Foods 365, which is Whole Foods store brand, has some of the highest quality ingredients and also just doesn't have a lot of fillers, so I don't have to read the can. So many other brands, you have to read the can to see what they put in it. But Whole 365 tends to have really competitive prices. The other store that has incredible store brands is Aldi's. If you've never tried out Aldi's store brand, just give it a try. I know it seems cheap and it doesn't seem like a high-end grocery store, but I think Aldi's store brand stands up next to almost anything else. And it's also some of the cheapest food I've found anywhere. So store brands over name brands often will save you a significant amount of money unless you have a coupon. But the next way to reduce your food expenses is to buy your non-perishable staples in bulk from places like Costco. We try to be careful what we buy from Costco, and we actually order a lot of the Costco stuff online because, again, we have trouble with impulse buying. I go into Costco to get a can of peanut butter, and I come out with a down jacket or I don't know, something I did not go in for. But we tend to buy things like canned tomatoes and tomato sauce from Costco because they're non-perishable. We can get a big bulk, get them organic, and it tends to be much less expensive than buying the store brand. And also we found that the Costco brand is very high quality. I wouldn't go to Costco for perishable items. You will end up with way more than you need and you will throw it out. But if you can buy non-perishable things like canned beans, tomato sauce, things like that, I think Costco is a great option. But the next way to reduce your food costs, and this is kind of a no-duh item, but only buy food when you go to the grocery store. Buying other items like home goods or things like that at the grocery store will often be much more expensive than you could purchase those same items for at, say, Walmart or Target or an Amazon. So try to spend money at the grocery store on food items, anything other than food items, and you're often overpaying. Now, the next largest expense for retirees, around 13% or on average $585, is healthcare. Now, this covers a bunch of different healthcare items: prescription drugs, co-pays, co-insurance, all the things that are not covered by your insurer or by Medicare. So how do you reduce these costs? So the first way to reduce your healthcare cost is buy the Medicare supplement plan or insurance plan that meets your need. Choosing the best Medicare policy once you turn 65 means you want one that includes your preferred doctors and the regular medication that you take and helps you avoid high out-of-network and out-of-pocket costs. Now, one of the things you don't want to do is skimp and save a few pennies, but end up having higher out-of-pocket costs, because those costs are much harder to plan for. And when you're on a fixed income, you don't want lumpy medical spending. The more consistent and predictable it can be, the better. But you also need to consider whether you want access to all the doctors who accept Medicare, as with the original Medicare plan, or whether you want a plan that comes with extra benefits, but a more limited provider network, such as the different Medicare Advantage plans. Honestly, I could do an entire video on this, and it's quite complicated to choose the right Medicare plan, particularly if you're going to do a Medicare Advantage plan. So you might want to find an agent who can help you compare, an insurance broker, I guess is a better word. Find an insurance broker who is certified to sell as many of the plans as possible or as many carriers as possible, so they can kind of help you know what the pros and cons of the different options are. And just make sure you have something that covers as much of the out-of-pocket cost as possible on both your healthcare and also on your prescriptions, so you don't have large, lumpy medical expenses. The second place you can reduce your healthcare cost is by purchasing generic drugs. Generic drugs, as a general rule, are just as effective as the name brands, and they're often significantly cheaper. So ask your doctor, do some research, make sure it's as effective. But as a general rule, choosing the generic over the name brand can save you some money. I'm not a doctor. I am way out of my element here. You want to check to some experts on that. So ask your doctor before you go say the financial guy on YouTube told me to buy generic drugs. That's the complete wrong thing. Third, know your policy thoroughly. Never pay out-of-pocket costs that are covered expenses due to errors. So often people get a bill, they think, this doesn't seem right, but I'm sure it's right. And then they pay this medical bill and they were never supposed to pay it. Doctors and hospitals and insurance companies make mistakes all the time. And one of the best ways to reduce your healthcare cost is just to advocate for yourself. Know what your plan covers. Be on top of it, because often they'll mistype the code, so they'll bill for the wrong thing, and that the service you got could have been covered, but they accidentally put a code in for something that wasn't covered. And so you just have to advocate for yourself and stay on top of it, because people make mistakes all the time. So the next category is transportation. Interestingly, transportation is a larger percentage of the average retiree's budget than even healthcare, almost $600 a month. So there are a number of ways that you can reduce your transportation cost. One of the big expenses for many people is going to be gas. Now, I live in the state of California. Gas is ridiculously expensive, but I had to go get gas today. The station I went to, the Shell, was $4.69 a gallon. Across the street, there was a 76, and it was, I think, $5.49, $5.59 a gallon. Almost $1 difference. Both great gas stations directly across from each other. And so you can save a lot of money by just shopping around for a cheaper gas station. There's an app called Gas Buddy that can help you find the cheapest gas station in your area. You know, you have to decide, is it worth it? If the only gas station with a cheaper price is all the way across town, you got to drive 15 to 20 minutes and spend half a gallon of gas to get there, it might not be worth it. But if it's a 5-minute drive, it might be. The other thing that you might want to consider if you do a lot of driving is purchasing an electric vehicle. Right now, there's some incredible tax rebates on electric vehicles. And so if you're doing a lot of driving around town where you can easily recharge, but you are putting a lot of miles on your car, just purchasing one of those over having a gas car may end up almost making the payment with your savings. The second way is by reducing your insurance premiums. The prices for insurance company vary widely. As a financial advisor, I view a lot of clients' insurance policies, and I'm just always shocked at how very similar policies for similar age people and similar driving histories and similar vehicles can really vary fairly widely from company to company. So shop around. You want to use a reputable insurance company. You want to carry enough insurance. One of the worst things you can do is being underinsured, and simply carrying the state minimums is not carrying enough insurance. So don't skimp on having enough insurance coverage, and also don't skimp by going with some shady insurance company that may not pay out. But there are some really great reputable companies that tend to be less. You might think about using an insurance company that charges you by the mile, or at the very least, calling your insurance carrier and say, look, I don't drive anymore. I think I deserve a lower rate, because often they'll ask you, how many miles do you drive? Is this for business or pleasure? And they may adjust the rate based upon that. I use a company called Metro Mile. So oddly, we live in Los Angeles, but we don't drive much. I don't know how we figured that out, but we have a fairly walkable neighborhood in Los Angeles. We don't drive very much. And so Metro Mile charges you on per mile that you drive. The third way you can reduce transportation cost is just evaluate transportation. There's a number of questions you need to ask yourself. First, do you need a car? Depending on where you live, you might not need a car. We could almost live our life without a car in Los Angeles. The only thing we really drive to on a regular basis is my daughter's school. And then if you have a fairly walkable life and you can just walk and ride your bike most places, then when you need a car, you can just rent a car. The other question I'd ask is, do you need a second vehicle? So many people have a second vehicle. They don't need a second vehicle, especially if you're retired and are going to be home a lot more. You might be able to get rid of that second car. And then one final idea, and this is not for everyone, trust me, but one thing that some people do is they rent their car out on Turo. It's kind of like an Airbnb, but for cars. I have a client who makes an extra $300, $400, $500 a month just renting his car out on this app. There's insurance on the car. It's fairly safe. You'd need to do some research into it. I don't put my car in Turo, but I have multiple clients and friends who do this, and they all speak fairly highly of it. So if you really want to have a car, but you hardly ever use it, and you want to reduce your transportation cost, maybe look at using Turo to rent your car out. Now, the final category, and this is the largest category for retirees, is housing. It's 36%, $1,500 a month, almost $1,600 a month on average. It's a huge expense. It's a huge expense for retirees, and it's a huge expense for everyone else, and it continues to go up. Housing prices, rent prices are going up across the board. Now, many retirees, many of you watching this, you own your own home, but you know there are still a lot of expenses, your utility expenses, property tax expenses, home upkeep, insurance. I could go on, right? Something is always going wrong, whether it's you're having to tint your house for termites, which we had to do last week, or the water heater goes out, or the roof starts leaking. Something is always going on. So here are a number of ways you can reduce your housing costs. And I'm going to start with the most controversial. In fact, I'm going to guess that 99% of you will want nothing to do with this idea, but it's something that we've done for the past 6 years, and we've had nothing but good experiences. We rent a part of our home out on Airbnb. We've rented a room on Airbnb. Now we rent our back house out on Airbnb. And it's a great way to generate extra income. One of my clients here in Los Angeles, he has a back house. He converted his garage into a little unit. and he makes about $3,000 a month, which is half of his retirement income just on Airbnb. Other people will just rent a room. If you have an extra room in your house, you can, a room with a bathroom, you can kind of create a little private area. You can still live in your house and just rent that room out. Now, I remember when I first rented a house out in our house when we lived in Washington, D.C., and this was before we had kids. And I was really nervous and kind of weirded out by the whole idea, but tons of people were doing it. And so I wanted to experiment with it and see what it was like. And it was an incredible experience. I met some of the nicest people. People would buy us really nice gifts and just treated us so well. And we're so grateful that we opened up our home. Often were people from other countries, and they just wanted an experience of staying in a typical American's home and kind of seeing how we lived. But it was a great way for us to have extra income, but also a great way to meet other people from around the world. The second way you can reduce your housing cost is by downsizing. So getting a smaller home, because a smaller home will often have less property taxes. You can reduce your utilities, you can reduce your insurance, you can reduce the upkeep cost, the heating, the utility, all those things. When you have a smaller home, you just have less cost. And so that's one way you can reduce your housing costs. So if you don't need a large home anymore, you had a lot of kids and you need a big house, and now it's just you and your spouse, or it's just you, and you've got this big home and you don't really need all the space, maybe it makes sense to downsize to help reduce those costs, in addition to maybe some of the income that you'll make from selling that home and moving into a smaller place. The third way you can reduce your housing cost is just moving to an area with a lower cost of living. There are a lot of places in the country that have very inexpensive housing, and they're very nice places to live. So if you live in New York or California or New Jersey and you don't have anything really tying you to the area, so you don't have family or tons of friends, it might make sense to look at moving to a state where they have lower housing costs. Now be careful when you make this leap, because you may find there's all kinds of things you may not have counted on. For example, you might see a house for $100,000 or $200,000 in Florida and think that's a steal, but look at what it costs to insure a home in Florida because of all their hurricanes. It may make that really inexpensive house more expensive than where you're living now. The other thing that a number of clients are exploring right now is moving internationally. I talked to someone today who's buying a house in Portugal, talked to someone last week who lives in Peru. And so more and more people are exploring moving to other countries, both because there's a great standard of living, but also they're able to really significantly reduce their housing cost. Another way you can reduce your cost is by moving to some sort of planned community, 55 plus community, or a condo, something with an HOA that spreads the upkeep cost across a large group of people. Because if you got a big yard that you're having to take care of, it just takes a lot of time, or it's expensive. All those things that you are spending time and money on could be covered potentially by the homeowners association, although that has its own downside. Another way you can reduce your housing cost is just making your home more energy efficient. There's even some government programs and some tax rebates to help with this. You might want to put solar in your home, or put new windows in that are more energy efficient, or energy efficient appliances. Another way you can reduce your cost is ask for a discount. Many utility companies have free and reduced programs for retirees on a low fixed income. So do some research, find out about these programs. You might be able to get cheaper cell phone. You might get cheaper power, water, internet. So lots of different options there that can help reduce your housing costs. Okay, so those are just some of the ways that you can reduce your expenses and hopefully free up some money in your budget without reducing your standard of living. Before I end, I want to tell you about the way that we've reduced our travel expenses. I promised you at the beginning, I teased this. There's a new company called Kindred, Kindred, that allows you to swap homes with other people. Now, this isn't for everyone, but for the right person, it could be an incredible opportunity. So last weekend, we went and stayed in someone's home in San Diego. You don't have to immediately swap with someone else. When you put your home on the app, when someone stays in your home, you get credits, 1 credit for each night, and then you can use those credits to stay in somebody else's home that's also on the app. And there's homes all over the world, in Europe and Mexico, tons in the US, New York, San Francisco, LA, places that people want to visit. The only expense that you pay is you pay a cleaning cost, which makes sense. And then you pay a $25 a night platform fee. So Kindred has money to keep running the app. It feels a bit more personal and transparent than Airbnb. So when we requested to stay in this woman's home, we actually had to make a video right then, introducing ourselves and our family and showing all of us. So my wife and my daughter and I had to make a little video And then she approved it. And then the app kind of works like Airbnb. There was just a code, told us where to get the lockbox, but it worked incredibly well. And I could see this for a retiree being a great opportunity. If you want to travel half the year, you could put your home up, get some credits, and then use those credits to stay in another city. Now, I put a link in the comments. I think I have 2 invites to Kindred. So I put a link for those invites. They're going to go quickly. Full disclosure, this is the most promo-y I've ever been. I'm always getting asked to promote things on my channel. This I did not get asked to promote, but I do get 2 free credits. So 2 nights I get to stay if you sign up. So anyway, the link's in the show notes below. Hey, thanks for watching. And I would also be interested to know, what retirement costs do you struggle with? Share any tips that you found to save money or thoughts you have in the comments below. And if you have a friend who could be helped by this information, please share it. There's a share link underneath the video. Please share this information with them. This is a labor of love for me. It's a passion project. In addition to my day job of running a financial planning firm, I'm very passionate about helping people retire without worry. And so please help me spread the word and share this video.